Hi everyone, welcome to the next instalment of the Britain's Central Coast Business Cluster Shadowboard podcasts. My name is Jason Savage, I'm the current chair of the Shadowboard, and today I'm joined by Andrew, who is one of our board directors. So Andrew, do you want to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your career history today and where you are now?
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Jason. My name's Andrew Clitheroe. I'm Finance Director and Treasurer of the cluster. And I'm also in the day job Finance Director of Cars Engineering, who are based here in Cumbria. So that's what I do now. I suppose in terms of my history to date, I'm not originally from Cumbria or Carlisle, close to Carlisle where I live now. I'm originally from Manchester. But I've lived in Cumbria about 15 years now, something like that. So my history today is I went to university in York, studied management studies. I didn't study accountancy as such. It was much more of a general business degree, really, which was much more of a rounded bit of marketing, bit of HR, a little bit of finance. So when I left university, like most people, I think, I wasn't entirely sure what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to work in business, and I recognised that I'd probably have to specialise in an area. So my first proper job was I worked for Nestle Roundtree in York, a huge employer in York. They certainly were at the time. Kit Kat, Polos, all the good stuff, Yorkie. I got a job there working in the finance shared service department, and it was brilliant. I worked there in York for a couple of years. I had a really good boss. It was a really good team, and they supported me through my accountancy exams. So I think the unfortunate truth about finance is a degree isn't enough. Even if you do a degree in finance, it isn't enough. You have to do a post-degree qualification, or not even if you haven't done a degree, to become a chartered accountant.
Yeah.
So I did that, and it was grim. So I was working full time and doing that qualification, but working for Nestle, it was okay as a job, but they were really good with study support, time off to do my exams. So I worked for them for about 5 years, something like that. And that's how I ended up living in Cumbria. After a couple of years working in York, they asked me, would I move, which is great. For me at the time, really, a move to Cumbria was a bit random. I didn't know anybody up here. So we moved up, my girlfriend moved up with me. And my wife now, she got a role up here. We settled up here, and it was brilliant in terms of our interests, like my interests. Like I was well into, hiking, mountain biking, cycling, running. It just ticked every box I needed. So to be honest, it was as much a lifestyle move as a professional move. But I passed my exams. We stayed up here. I moved around a little bit more with Nestle over the next couple of years on specific projects and stuff, but we stayed in Cumbria. So I worked for Nestle. I worked for Story Group for 7 years in Carlisle. Another, significant high-profile employer in the town, which is brilliant. Again, good team, good people. I really like working there. Did loads of different stuff for them in their rail, construction, house building, land businesses. I was fully qualified then, and then I suppose my introduction more into the nuclear businesses within Cumbria, I moved to Mighty. So Mighty 1FM, who were a huge employer on Sellafield and in Cumbria in general. Hundreds of people working on Sellafield, managing the cleaning, security, waste, some engineering contracts on site. So I went there as head of finance and commercial. And that was the real move. That it was great from a career point of view, but it was just enormously out of my comfort zone. I knew stories, I knew the business, I knew the people, and I recognized at the time that really I should just go and do something different just to push me on a bit. So I did. It was much more of a client-facing role. It was a difficult role. The contract was commercially complicated, and it was a big learning curve for me. And I'm glad I did it.
Yeah.
Good team, good people. Was there for about 3 years. Again, sometimes these things are a bit random. I wasn't enormously looking for a move, but I was approached about a potential role with Cars, who are they're a UK PLC with a proper global operation at the time. Still New Zealand, South America, the US, Europe. I knew about them. I was always intrigued and a little bit wanted to know more about Cars. I came, looked at the role, and it was just for me. So I moved here originally as head of business finance, which is much more of a group-wide role, and then more recently specialised in their engineering businesses. So Cars Group overall is 20 plus businesses based all around the world. Cars Engineering is 7 businesses, 4 of which were in the UK, and 2 of which are in Cumbria. Probably the most high profile of which is Bendal's, based here in Carlisle. And for me, this role is brilliant. It's some good people, some good businesses. It's very much, engineering, contracts, projects type business that I understand. And that's the role I do today.
Fantastic. I think that was a really good summary, and I particularly liked when you said about when Nestle were helping you do your qualifications, but it was hard graft, because I think a lot of the time it might be, and the fact about getting into finance and stuff about a degree, but that's not enough. And I don't think that's not sort of publicized, I don't think, sufficiently. And actually it is really hard graft, and a lot of people maybe do it, but it's really hard work. And it isn't just something that people should expect employers just to do, because it's a two-way street. We want employers to be able to develop people, but we want people to understand that, like, to be developed, it is quite difficult.
Well, it's really easy, isn't it? To pass your exams, do all that, and then pretend it was easy and forget it quickly. And you do see that. Like, unfortunately, you need to do it.
Yeah.
But I still remember how hard it was. So I don't. We like to recognise that when we're all working hard in the day job.
Yeah.
Then you have to go home and do another 3 or 4 hours study.
Mm.
It's not easy, and it's years of work. But unfortunately, that's just the way it is.
Yeah. So, in terms of, you mentioned you were the finance director for the BECBC.
Yeah.
So do you want to tell us, how did you get involved in BECBC to begin with, and how did you sort of fall into or go into that role with the cluster?
Yeah. Okay. So Cars and previously Mighty, my last 2 businesses I've worked for have both been members of the cluster, and I've attended meetings more with Cars than with Mighty, really. Prior to becoming involved as a director, I was always interested in the cluster. I think it was always worthwhile for Cars from a purely business perspective to be involved, and it still is. I think that was where my level of understanding grew. Ivan Baldwin as well was a previous employee at Cars. Our paths didn't really cross because Ivan moved on just as I joined, but because of that, I knew a lot about the cluster. And Ivan probably set the foundation for Cars being involved to the level it still is today. How I became involved with FD was I just saw something online that said they were looking for somebody. At the time, I saw it as an opportunity personally to get a little bit more experience, and also, for Cars as well, to get a little bit more involved. So I did. I had a chat with Ivan, understood pretty quickly, yeah, I could do a job and I think I could help. So that's how I got involved. I suppose the timing was, it couldn't have been worse really, because I joined the cluster in February 20. We all know what happened in March 20 in terms of COVID. So I suppose, my original objectives for the cluster were getting a little bit involved, trying to be a little bit more commercial with how we understand, financially how the cluster works, budgeting, making sure it's sustainable as an organization. That all just changed really on day one, as we were forced to just, it was crisis management mode really, like no different than pretty much every business in the UK. We were forced to look at, how we were operating at the time, how we would operate through COVID, and just to make sure we were still there after COVID. So that's how I got involved probably for the first year, 18 months with the cluster. So it'd be just about 2 years this month or last month.
Yeah.
Became involved.
But I think with you saying it was a bad time, it's probably also for the cluster a good time for you to join, because we have had to go through quite a bit of complications with obviously the way the business runs, because maybe sometimes people, BECBC is a business. It had, we have income and we have expenditure, and COVID had a massive impact on how we delivered our work, our meetings, etc. So probably it was a bad time for you, but a good time for the cluster to have somebody with that experience and that mindset of wanting to be more commercial, to look at, right, how do we get value for money for the members, but also maximize the fact that how we can deliver, because although we're a not-for-profit organization, if we can deliver things more efficiently, then we can deliver more. So it, not
100%. I suppose, in the day job, everything that Cars does and did through COVID, the agriculture business, the engineering business, these were nationally important businesses that needed to continue to operate. In engineering, it was immediately obvious that the projects that we were doing for Sellafield and for other organizations like that needed to continue. We weren't in the position where we could just go and all go home, furlough the staff for a year and just come back. And the cluster was a bit like that as well. Yeah. I think I still think the way the cluster operated through that period, the way it moved to online, the way the meetings continued to operate, it did it really well, and it did it before a lot of organizations understood how they continue to operate. Yeah. So from a finance point of view, we needed to make sure that our income opportunities were clearly going to be limited, but we needed to continue to operate. So if there are other things the cluster does in terms of other events and awards and things like that, which contribute to its operating model, but they all stopped. So we had to say, right, actually, if we're just working online, what does that mean in terms of our income, and what does it mean in terms of who we're going to have to pay to allow us to do that?
Yeah, exactly. So moving past that a little bit then, and to what we always want to do with these podcasts is give a little bit of a nugget of some advice to younger people. So what sort of advice would you give maybe to younger people wanting to go out and find? I think you've already sort of touched on one point, which maybe education through a degree is good, but actually there's a lot of your certification and your professional body stuff that you need to go through. Is there any sort of other advice that you would give to people looking to get into the industry?
Well, first of all, that's absolutely right in terms of education through a degree is good, but it's definitely not the only route into a senior finance role. And people do get a little bit tunnel vision sometimes on doing a degree, and there's an awful lot of people do a degree, they don't know why they're doing it, they just want to do a degree. I suppose into finance, apprenticeship routes into finance are something like big accountancy firms, big four accountancy firms are now using as one of their key routes into their organizations, probably from A level. So there's a lot of merit in that. And I suppose in finance as well, you either you can qualify through an accountancy firm, or a big accountancy firm, a local accountancy firm, or you can go into industry. Yeah. I always wanted really to work in industry. I didn't want to work for an accountancy firm, but that's just personal preference.
Yeah.
It's also the opportunity that's available where you live. So, understanding that a degree isn't the only option, understanding that working for a big accountancy firm isn't the only option is important.
Yeah. And we have quite a lot of smaller businesses. Obviously, with the cluster, we have hundreds of small businesses who all need financial support and things like that. So Cumbria is probably a good place for getting into that sector, whether you want to be in industry or you want to be in practice.
Yeah, and I do believe Cumbria, is a great place to live in terms of what it can offer in terms of a lifestyle. And a finance career, gives you that. There are a lot of, we don't have a massive presence in Cumbria from the big 4 accountancy firms, but that's not the only option. You don't want to move to Newcastle, you don't want to move to Manchester. There are small accountancy firms, a lot of which are closely involved with the cluster.
Yeah,
Dots and people like that. These do offer great career routes into finance.
Yeah, fantastic. Right. I think that brings us to a close. Thank you very much, Andrew. I think that was really good to get your sort of background, how you're involved in the cluster, and some advice to young people. So thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yes. Bye.
Cheers, mate.